Welcome to the Difference of 13 podcast, where we make a difference by doing it differently. Welcome to the Difference of 13 podcast.
Can you see anything?
No, I'm actually quite busy. Well, so much for that. Well,
can I try this?
Yeah. So, welcome today, guys. If you're not watching on YouTube, we look pretty stellar wearing Terry's glasses today. We are daring to be different with our style.
Terry really can't see.
I'm really blind.
We're excited today. We have a special guest today, Ted Graham, one of our therapists here at Par for Success. Ted, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm Ted Graham, physical therapist at Par for Success. You just said that. I've been here for about a year and a half and just do physical therapy training. I've been here in North Carolina for about 3.5 years. I'm originally from California.
And what did you do in California?
This is a family-friendly podcast.
Yes.
So you must be talking about those corporate jobs that I was doing.
Yeah, no.
Working in a software company? Is that what it was?
No, let's go back a little further.
Back a little further. Oh, you must be talking about when I was working cleaning up dirty rap albums.
Yes.
Yes. So I did have a job for a short time when I lived in Los Angeles where I was taking the curse words out of albums for people like Snoop Dogg and Master P and all their minions. It was pretty fun.
Cleaned them up so kids could listen to it.
Yeah, because they were still really good for kids to listen to, even without the bad words.
Yeah.
But $150 an hour, can't sneeze at that.
Yeah, really. It sounds like a good gig.
It was a good gig, but then
you were the guy that made me very uncool when my mom bought me the edited versions.
Yes, that was my fault.
Yeah.
Well, at least you could put food on your table, I guess.
Exactly.
But, yeah, well, I'm excited today. We're talking about being different and daring to be different. The main topic we're going to talk about is insurance in the healthcare world and different ways to navigate that. That's one of the reasons why we have Ted here. He is our insurance expert. At least that's what we'll say until he starts talking, and then we'll let you make the decision. But I think one of the biggest questions and just most confusing things in the world is healthcare and how does it work, and how do you explain that to your patients and your clients when you work with them? What sort of questions do you hear?
So are you talking about now in our current model or when I worked in an insurance-based model?
Let's go both. I think our listeners, I'm pretty confident, are both. Some of you are probably in an insurance-based clinic. You see your doctors, you use insurance there. Hopefully there's some of you out there listening who are pursuing healthcare based on the value that you're getting from the provider and not necessarily what your insurance will cover. So why don't we go both directions?
Okay. So we'll start with the insurance model because that's where I started, and I think that's where the majority of people probably live. It's nothing inherently wrong with the providers that are insurance-based models, but the problem is with the system. I was only, for instance, if I was seeing someone, I had a 45-minute session, I maybe was only able to spend 15 to 20 minutes with that person. And the rest of the time they were with an aide or an assistant.
Warming up on the bike.
Or warming up on the bike, exactly. I might have 2 to 3 people with me at the same time. And I just found over a couple of years that I just wasn't able to provide the quality of care that I got into this field for.
I mean, how do you focus your attention when you're trying to keep track of 3 different patients at one time?
It is very difficult. And basically that's what I'm saying is you basically have to prioritize, well, this person needs my immediate attention more than this person, but they both want your attention and need and pay for your attention equally.
That's what I was about to say, and they're paying for it and not getting it.
They're both paying the same rate, correct?
Exactly. Well, yeah, basically. I mean, everyone has different copays, but they are paying from an insurance as far as what they're really paying in the grand scheme of things.
What you're billing is the same.
Yep, exactly.
Whether it's you or if it's an aide that qualifies.
Yep.
Which is crazy to me.
Time.
That is absolutely crazy to me that somebody with not even a college degree is going to take somebody through exercise and you're going to be billed the same amount as if somebody with a doctorate is going to do it.
Exactly. So that was something that was hard for me to reconcile when I was working there, which is why I sought out and made a change to come to a different model. So we'll kind of dive into that, unless you wanted to.
I think I have a couple questions,
Okay,
and I'm sure you do from your experience, Terry. You bring a different perspective to this. But when you have 3 patients in an hour, I mean, how do you deal with if somebody legitimately has a problem? Like if somebody comes in, they say, "Hey, the exercises you gave me last time screwed me up," or "I fell in the meantime."
Right.
You were seeing me for my shoulder, I fell, and now my hip hurts. How do you handle that? Can you even treat the hip if you're only seeing them for their shoulder?
Well, no. It depends on really what you're. Ideally, you would be able to, but depending on your employer and what their rules are, insurance rules really are you cannot treat that person without a medical doctor saying that you have a referral for that body part.
So just to clarify, so if Terry walks in because her shoulder hurts, and you're treating that, she comes back next week. She was out partying, dancing. Not that she ever really does that.
No, never.
on
But
Saturdays.
She's in her stilettos, and she,
Those 4 or 5 inch.
5, absolutely.
She falls over, not because of anything she was doing, just there was a strong wind.
Right.
And she hurts her hip. She comes in to see you on Monday, and you can't treat her hip.
Nope.
No.
I have to contact her doctor and get them to write a referral for her hip, which could be
Which means
a day.
Now, does she have to go and see the doctor to get the script sometimes?
It depends on the doctor.
So that's another cost to the
and,
consumer.
And this is not entirely a made-up scenario because not necessarily...
This is truth.
Yeah, not necessarily the stilettos, but I've been in physical therapy for a long time, and things happen. And yes, in that scenario, I would have had to make an appointment, go see my primary care, who would probably then send me to an orthopedic, who would then probably want to do imaging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to get the treatment on the secondary injury could probably take another 3 weeks.
That's 3 weeks of dancing that you just missed.
Right? Where I'm in pain, may or may not be able to work, probably can't dance, which would be really sad, and not getting treatment for it. So that injury's just getting worse.
You could probably get a new stiletto much quicker,
Yes.
from that broken heel.
And the money
Amazon
I would
Prime.
save, I
Amazon
could...
days.
Prime, baby. We need Amazon Prime in healthcare.
Seriously.
Right?
Get your doctor's script right now. So, and what about you, Terry? As obviously a patient who's gone through that scenario, what were your experiences? You've obviously been to a lot of different clinics.
A lot. So when I was first starting out as a physical therapy patient way long ago, I didn't really understand the difference between a physical therapist and aide. To me, I walked into the clinic and everybody was wearing the polo and khaki pants, therefore they were all equal.
So, Ted, can you elaborate? What is the difference between a PT, a physical therapist, physical therapy assistant, and an aide?
So a physical therapist has, at a minimum, a bachelor's degree. That's really old. The older physical therapists, at one point, it was a bachelor's degree.
I love you, Mom. If my mom, if you're watching, you're one of those with a
Chris's
bachelor's degree.
You know so much. And so that's a minimum bachelor's. And then it was a master's degree for many years. And currently, you have to have a doctorate to graduate with physical therapy, enough to actually treat people. And that's been for I think about the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years.
I'm one of the slackers with just the masters.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of commiserate with our knowledge levels.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm transitioning to podcasting, which I'm not sure this is the future, but we'll see.
Do you have your master's in podcasting?
Clearly not.
Yeah.
So yeah, a physical therapist has minimum 4 years training, probably more like 6 to 7 years of specific training. A physical therapy assistant is a 2-year credential degree, basically.
Is it an associate's or?
I think it's an associate's.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get it at a community. I don't know if they're technically community colleges, but something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a 2-year degree. Definitely some training, some things that they're not allowed to do, that they can't do. They work under the guidance of a physical therapist.
So that's where, when you go to your therapy session, Terry, your first session, your evaluation would always be with the therapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first person when you walk into a clinic is your actual licensed physical therapist.
Yes.
And the model, how does the model work now? Because obviously from a business perspective, the business is getting paid the same amount regardless if the PT assistant sees the person or the PT.
Exactly.
So how does that translate in terms of what actually occurs for Terry as the patient?
So it varies clinic by clinic, but more and more you see clinics that are trying to make it to where the physical therapist does mostly evaluations and reevaluations, and the physical therapy assistant does as many treatments as possible because with the wage difference, basically.
Right.
Physical therapy assistants get paid less than physical therapists, but they get reimbursed the same amount.
Right, but you get reimbursed more for an evaluation.
And you get reimbursed more for an evaluation.
So basically the business strategy is to have the higher paid employee deliver the higher reimbursed services.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see the strategy as, because that they don't have a choice with that. A physical therapy assistant can't do the evaluation.
Well, right. Yeah.
I see the strategy as, well, we have to have the physical therapist do that. Let's have the assistant do everything else if possible.
Mm-hmm.
That way we save more money.
Yeah, and I think if I'm looking at it as a business owner, I'm looking at what service or can I have my employees deliver that gives me the greatest margins. And if I have to pay my physical therapist $50 an hour, it's better to have them do something that I get reimbursed $300 for than something I only get reimbursed $200 for.
Right. Definitely.
Versus if I'm paying a physical therapy assistant $20 to $30 an hour, I'll have them perform the services that I don't get paid as much on.
Yep. And I think 30 is probably a high number for an assistant. I think they're more in the 20 realm.
Yeah. So PRN means just kind of, well, that's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
But so now how does that, from a customer experience, I think that obviously turns into the puppy mill physical therapy model, which you were describing.
And I will say most of the places I've went to, they were not very, I don't think they were trying to hide it necessarily, but they were not upfront about, oh, well, so-and-so is the physical therapist and this person is an aide. It was just, you're working with John today. Tomorrow you're going to work with Susie. And, as a patient, you're like, okay, whatever, you feel like you don't have a choice. You don't have a voice in what's happening. You just do as you're told to do.
In reality.
Until you get smart.
In reality, you totally do. I think as the consumer, you need to.
I eventually learned.
You need to walk in and say, I'm not going to, not to say PT assistants aren't good. There's some that are phenomenal.
Oh, there's some that are great, yeah.
Right, but I think you need to decide for yourself who is the person that you want to see, and you demand that you see that person, or you take your business elsewhere.
Yes.
You only get one body, and you should have a choice in terms of who's going to take care of it.
Yep. And then we still haven't talked about the aides.
Yeah.
So a physical therapy aide or a tech, they're called technicians here more so than aides, are basically an untrained, willing body that gets paid about $10, $10 to $12 an hour. They get a day or two of training when they start, and they're told to basically take people through the exercises that the physical therapist or the PTA don't have time for.
Right.
Yeah.
And that could be anywhere from a high school student to actually athletic trainers are treated as aides in a PT clinic. So
but you're winning if you get an aide that's a trainer.
Oh yeah, you win big time. But yeah, I think I think it's just an important knowledge gap from the consumer standpoint of, ask the people what their qualifications are.
Yep.
Yep. If it's just somebody with 2 days of training, taking me through the home exercises that you could be doing at home, like, why are you wasting your money?
In your time.
And time's even more valuable, probably.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to a thought you had earlier, like how you deal with multiple people at the same time, and what if there's a problem? There were times where I may have had 2 or even 3 people in at the same time. If somebody came to me with a problem and I really had to deal with that person one-on-one, then one of those other people was basically going to get that. They were going to get their exercises that they already know how to do by an aide, and then I might check in for 5 minutes at the end, and then they go about their way. Yeah. Which is just, it's a ripoff, basically.
So why don't you talk about kind of what you decided to go do instead?
So I sought out an individual.
Really good looking, I heard.
No. You're thinking of someone else. I actually was thinking about doing it on my own. A very similar concept to what we're doing here at Par for Success. And I found that Chris was already doing it, and kind of sought out, we had a lunch meeting, and I really liked what he had to say. And
we held hands. We sang Kumbaya.
We did. That was the second meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Second date, yeah.
That was dinner.
I don't
think.
sing Kumbaya on the first date.
No.
So it's the difference here is, when you have an appointment with me, it's an hour-long appointment, and you're with me from the minute 1 to minute 60 of that appointment, if that's what we decide we need to do. There's no aids, there's no assistance. I'm not passing you off to the next person. Which is a huge thing even to another physical therapist. That was actually a gripe of mine at a previous place, is people would get passed around to different physical therapists, and that continuity of care is huge to me. I know what has happened to you at each and every session.
That was a problem for me, because I think I saw every physical therapist at UNC.
Right.
And
just whoever had the open slot.
And come to find out my situation was complicated, and not having that history was very, because they look and like, God, she's here like every other day. What's the deal?
Yeah.
And there was a reason for it.
We actually did nose goes when you would come in.
Oh God, we have her again.
That's pretty good.
I think, if you're a therapist listening, thinking about getting into a cash model, if you're a consumer out there or somebody who just has aches or pains and just curious about this, understanding that there is a very vast difference in the type of care. And it's not necessarily because a therapist in a cash practice is any better skill-wise than a therapist in an insurance-based practice. It's the environment that you're put into. And I mean, I think you've illustrated that beautifully in terms of 3 people. Straws, guys.
Yeah.
In the cash model, you're set up for success. Yep. In the insurance model, you have so many things going against you. You could be the best physical therapist in the world, but you have your hands tied behind your back.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the cool things as a business owner is, in the insurance model, you don't control what you get reimbursed. You don't control what an hour of your time is worth. The insurance company tells you how much your time is worth.
Yep.
So you're kind of handcuffed in terms of what you can bill and what you can do. In the cash model, we charge 50% less than the average therapy session here in North Carolina, but we don't have to employ 2 or 3 people to handle our insurance claims. We get paid as a business at the time of service, so it ends up being better as a business because our margins are equal to, if not, they're actually better than insurance-based margins. It's 50% cheaper for the consumer. And I think the stat is the average number of minutes that a therapist spends with a client in an insurance-based visit is about 15 minutes. So you get 3 times, the time. So basically, in one visit, it's essentially equivalent to 4 visits in an insurance model, which I think is a reason why it equates to we only really need to see people 4 to 6 times as opposed to 12 to 18 times.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge point for people to take on is. They're very different models, and it's not necessarily that the professionals are any more or less skilled. I do think it takes a certain clinician to function in a cash clinic.
Right.
But I think it's really the ecosystem that we're forced to practice in as clinicians definitely dictates to a degree our success levels for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I know some great therapists that are just stuck spinning their wheels in an insurance system just because there's limited. That's 95% of the services out there are insurance based, and they don't know any better. People just don't know about a cash based system.
This is the same thing that doctors are dealing with. Everybody complains. I went to see my doctor and he didn't want to answer my questions, and it's not that they don't want to; it's that they don't have time to do that because they have quotas. They have to see a certain number of patients per hour because that's what insurance requires of them. We did a podcast a couple of weeks ago about my wonderful visit to the primary care who accused me of being a drug seeker. So this
Smart
week,
man.
Have we ruled that out?
Yes, we've ruled that out. So this week I went to a cash pay primary care physician. And originally the appointment was set for 30 minutes. Well, once we started talking, he discovered, my situation's very complicated. We ended up spending over 2 hours together. Now, if this was an insurance-based clinic, there's no way that would have happened. We would have touched on maybe one issue and moved on. Whereas this guy, we had the time to sit down and have a full conversation about almost everything that's going on and kind of develop a plan for going forward.
2 hours and you almost got through everything?
We almost got through everything. There's a
By
lot.
almost, she means about 25%.
There's a lot to talk
Good news,
about.
people. We have lots of content.
Yes. There's no shortage.
So I think, but wrapping up here, I think the last thing I wanted to make sure we addressed was the payment question that we get from everybody. And obviously it's, it costs half, but people will say, well, my insurance will cover it. So I think there definitely are times where using your insurance, if you're truly going for a cost decision, is I really think there's going to become a dichotomy of two healthcare systems here in the U.S. I think you're going to have your insurance kind of government-run system, which is sort of what we described. You're going to be one of the puppies in the mill, and hopefully no one else has a problem when you do. And then I think you're going to have the value-based system, which is sort of like what we see in the UK, where there's that split system. And I think that's where you're going to be able to pay less, get actual time with the person, unless you've met your deductible. I think that's an important piece.
Yes.
Is, the way we're seeing insurance companies go, where these plans have higher and higher deductibles. If you have not met your deductible and you don't anticipate meeting your deductible, cash is usually way cheaper. I think we did a metric a while ago. It was on average, it would save you $1,800 to $2,000.
Yeah.
Now, if you have met your deductible, I think then you have a decision to make. And do you want to save the cash and roll the dice essentially, or do you want to continue to pay for a value-based service where you're going to get one-on-one care, you're going to be taken care of in that manner?
Well, and the part of that metric that you can't really factor in very easily is the value of your time. We've talked about that before. If you have a physical therapy appointment, chances are you need to take off a half a day, 20, 30 minutes to get to the appointment. If you're at an insurance-based clinic, you're probably not going to be seen right on time. If your appointment's at 10, you may not get in there until 10:30. Your appointment's maybe an hour. Now you're looking at 11:30, another half hour to get home. You have to take a half a day off of work. And if you need to go to multiple visits, think of all that time you're going to have to take off of work. For some people, that's going to be unpaid time.
I think the appointment time will probably be 53 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
53,
minimum.
sorry.
It might be 38.
That's the PT hour, 53 minutes.
Yes, because that way you can build that fourth unit right when you hit minute 53.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
Or
Yeah.
like some therapists I saw, it might have been 27 minutes, but it still felt like 53.
It did, yeah, right? Yeah. So, well, let's wrap up there, guys. I really, if anybody listening, you do have questions, please reach out to us. Instagram, Facebook, comment on the podcast. I think importantly, if this was helpful at all, please give us a rating, 5 stars. YouTube, if you're watching, thumbs up. Terry gets sad if you give us thumbs down.
I get very sad.
She might cry.
She doesn't need more issues. She already spent 2 hours telling the doctor about
Yeah.
it. Anything else that we want to wrap up with here? Or?
I don't think so. I think that's a good closing spot.
Awesome.
wrapped it up.
Well, thank you for being here, Ted.
No problem. My pleasure.
I think the final would be let us know if you think Ted was an expert or not.
Ooh.
Yeah. Do you want to see more Ted?
Oh, that's a good question too.
Yeah.
Maybe can you get
probably know
Snoop?
the answer
Can we
to
get
that.
Snoop on as a guest?
No, but if I come on again and you give me enough notice, I will bring my Master P doll that goes, na na na.
We need that.
Our ratings will spike. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening, and I hope you have a great week.